So the next few sections as we get into Chapter 7 are not really difficult ideas and sections. The video shouldn't be really long and in-depth and detailed, but I do want you to do what I ask you to do. Meet my expectations. Persevere through the videos. Take your notes. Follow along. Some of you are missing out on the fact that I constantly go back and review and reteach things that you should already know, especially when I know they're going to be on homework questions. And some of you are missing that, and then you're coming and asking me questions. I'm going to start telling you to go back and watch the video. Because if I'm reteaching it on the video, you're either not paying attention or you didn't watch the video. This video is how we're going to use the algebraic expressions that we've been building for the past couple of lessons. When we look at this, this is a rate is equal to something. So these two formulas are things that you are going to use in junior high, high school, and you'll use them as an adult. I've used them as an adult when I go on vacation. This would be, well, what rate would I travel at or need to travel at if I have to go this far and I have this amount of time? If I know I have 120 miles to go and I need to get there in 2 hours, then I would have to go 60 miles per hour, because I would have 120 divided by 2, and that would be 60. So I'd have to go 60 miles per hour. I can figure out a distance that I'm going if I know my rate, such as 55 miles per hour, and how much time I'm driving. So if I'm going 55 miles per hour, and I'm traveling for 6 hours, I would be able to figure out how far I could go in that rate and time. So we're going to be plugging information in and setting up our algebraic expressions on how to use them. Sometimes we're going to solve for them, and sometimes we're not. We're just going to be able to set them up with these informations from story problems that we're going to be reading. For example, we start out with Rafe. Rafe's flight from Los Angeles to New York took 5 hours. He wants to know the average speed of the plane in miles per hour. So when we talk about this, we're talking about an average speed, and that is the rate. How many miles per hour we were traveling in, which we just looked at the very beginning with the R is equal to D divided by T. So distance divided by time. So if I can set up that information that I'm given, then I know that my rate is equal to the distance that I'm going divided by how much time I'm spending. And we know his flight was 5 hours. So I know it's going to be the distance divided by the 5 hours, which is the time that we went. So we begin to fill in the information in our book and thinking through and processing that scenario. Write an expression that's going to represent the average speed of the plane. Use a variable, so we're going to use a letter, to represent the unknown quantity. So we're going to have two terms in this. We're going to have the distance and we're going to have the time to solve for the rate that we're going. Think about the plane's average speed is equal to the distance traveled divided by, so D divided by the amount of time that we traveled. So we're going to let D represent the distance. So that's going to be our first term, is a D. And we're going to look at how many traveled, or how far we traveled in units, which is our time. So that's going to be our second term. So when I begin to set it up, then I'm going to have D for miles, my distance, divided by my time, which is how many hours. So I'm going to have 5. So 2 terms in this expression. It's an expression because I'm not solving for anything. Once I have my algebraic expression of D divided by 5, D being my distance for my miles, and I'm dividing by how much time I'm spending, then I can start solving mathematically for what we're talking about to figure out my rate. Now, when we say that my rate, we're talking about an actual unit rate. And unit rate was one of the things that some people had questions about on their mid-chapter previous homework assignments, because they couldn't remember what it was. So once again, we'll review that in this video. So as I'm filling it in, and I'm told then what D is. So I'm being told what the second term in my math problem is going to be. So I'm going to take 2,460 miles, which is how far the plane flight was, and divide it by 5, which is how long he was in the plane. When I look at my unit rate, so a unit rate is any rate that has a denominator of 1. So I'm told how much money I'm spending for so many pounds of this. So then I would reduce it to find out how much it costs per pound. This one I'm looking at how far I'm going divided by or per the amount of time. So then I want to find a unit rate. This is my original rate. My unit rate is going to be per 1 hour. So I'm going to be looking at miles per hour as an average speed. So when I look at what I have here, then I know I'm traveling at 5 hours. I'm going to divide by 5 to get my denominator of 1. That's how I get my rate, or my unit rate. When I divide my denominator by 5, then what do? Multiply my numerator by 5. So 2,460 divided by 5. If I plug in my top number, always, into my division box, then I get my handy-dandy calculator and I type in the 1 that's inside the box, 2,460 divided by 5. Then when I divide out, I'm going to see that I have 492. And then I can go through the steps and make sure that I do it properly. So my unit rate, or my final answer for this scenario, is that we went 492 miles per hour. When I look at this one, then I'm going to be talking about Joanna. It says that Joanna makes and sells candles online. She charges $7 per candle, and shipping is $5 per order. So if we have 1 candle, it's going to be $5 to ship it. If I have 20 candles, it's going to be $5 to ship it. So we're going to look at, in being my candles, it's going to represent the number of items that she sells. And then we look at how we're going to set it up. So we're going to have 3 different terms in this expression. I'm going to have my candles. I'm going to have how much it costs. This is how much it costs, and this is the number of candles. And then I'm going to have my shipping charge. So when I begin to build my expression, then I know I'm charging $7 per candle that I sell. I don't know how many candles that I'm selling, but I know I'm going to represent it with N because this is what it told me to do. And then for every order, I'm going to add an additional $5, which is my shipping charge. So when I write out my expression, then what I end up with is $7 times N. So a letter touching a number, once again, is multiplication, plus 5. Now if I'm going to solve that, then I would think I need to follow my order of operations. As for several extra presents, there are not any absolute values, square roots, exponents, or parentheses. So then I have to do multiplication and division from left to right. And I'm going to continue to review this because some of you are still struggling with this. Multiplication and division from left to right means whatever comes first. If there's division first, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to work from left to right. If multiplication is first, I'm going to do it and work from left to right. Everything else that should be left is addition and subtraction. Then I'm going to start from left to right. If addition comes first, I do it, followed by subtraction. However, if subtraction comes first, I do it from left to right. So I do the subtraction followed by the addition. Always working from left to right. Here, I'm going to do my multiplication. Then I would do my addition of adding the $5 shipping charge. So when I look at what information I'm told then for the next half, which is part B, it says, well, in March, one of Joanna's customers placed an order for $4. In May, the same customer placed an order for 6 candles. What was the total charge for both orders? I think I said dollars there and I meant candles. I apologize. So we want to find out how much did that customer spend over those 2 months. So the same expression gets used. The same expression has 2 different terms. 7 times N would be 1 term because they're paired together. Adding 5 would be my other term. It's going to be the last thing that I do. If I look at March, then I know in March I bought 4, and in May I bought 6. So So my orders of operation tell me to multiply and divide from left to right. I'm going to start with my multiplication. 7 times 4 is going to give me what? Well, 7 times 4 is 28, and 7 times 6 is 42. Then I'm left with my addition and my subtraction, so I have 28 plus 5, and then on this one I have 42 plus 5. So I have 33, I have 47. But my total then is going to be those two amounts for each month added together. So I would take 33 plus 47. And 33 plus 47 tells me 80. So that customer in those 2 months spent $80 on candles. Moving ahead. Louisa read that the highest elevation of Mount Everest is 8,848 meters. She wants to know, how much higher Mount Everest is than Mount Rainier. Use this information for 1 and 2. So you'll see on the board for tonight's homework that I have that 8 goes with 7. And you'll see that each of these next few sets of questions are paired together. That's what I mean that 8 goes with 7. Write an expression that represents the difference in heights of the two mountains. Tell what the variable is, or in your expression represents. So I have 2 things I have to do. The first thing I have to do is write an expression. Notice I'm not solving anything. So those of you who are not reading your questions and you're skimming them, this is where you're getting really confused. I'm just writing an expression. Well, my expression is then going to have a variable in it, and I have to tell what the variable is. 2 things to do. Well, first, my expression is I know I'm finding a difference, and I'm finding the difference of Mount Everest and Mount Rainier. I'm told the information for Mount Everest. So I'm going to have 8,848 meters minus whatever Mount Rainier is equal to. So I'm going to choose to use an R. And then my second step to my question is telling you that R is Rainier. That way I know what the R is when I would be going and sitting down to figure out this information. Then I'm going to put 2 and 1 together. I'm going to use that information to solve for 2. They are connected. In the same way as the board says, 8 goes with 7 for your homework. Number 2 goes with number 1. So Louisa reaches the highest elevation of Mount Rainier and finds that it is 4,392 meters. Use your expression, this one over here, to find the difference in the mountain's heights. So I'm going to take my 8,848 and I'm going to subtract Mount Rainier's. And that R is now found here in that information as 4,392. So then it's a straightforward subtraction that you've been doing for the past 4 years of your life in school. I'm going to subtract the 2 and I see that I have 4,456. So I know Rainier is 4,456. I put feet. It actually is meters, so it should be an M. Well, 4,456 meters shorter than Mount Everest. All right, so a muffin recipe calls for 8 times as much flour as sugar. Use this information for these 2 plus the next one. Write an expression that can be used to find the amount of flour needed for a given amount of sugar. Tell what the variable is for the expression. So I know that if I have 8, it's 8 times what? 8 times my sugar. So I have 8S, right? It's only one term because they go together. So I have S is equal to sugar. So I've given you my expression. I've given you what S is equal to. Going to go over here. Use your expression to find the amount of flour needed when 3/4 of a cup of sugar is used. So I know I'm going to have to take my 8S and I'm going to have to multiply it by the fraction of 3/4 for sugar. So 8 times 3/4. Now I can't multiply whole numbers and fractions, so my whole numbers are always made into fractions. So I'm going to have 8 over 1 times 3/4. Always easier to cross reduce, and I will always cross reduce when I can. So 4 goes into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 8 two times. Then I'm left with straightforward multiplication of fractions. Can I multiply fractions? Yes. How? Multiply across. So I have 2 times 3, and I have 1 times 1. I have 6 over 1, so I know I have 6 cups. 6 cups of flour is what it would take if I had 3/4 cups of sugar, because I know for every 8, or for every cup of sugar, I have 8 times as much flour. When I look at number 5, then, it's asking, is the value of the variable in your expression restricted, held back, okay, to a particular set of numbers, and explain? So think about that. If I'm talking about 8 times S, I'm talking about flour and sugar. Am I restricted to any group of numbers? Well, can I use whole numbers? Yeah. Can I use fractions? Yeah. Can I use decimals? Yeah. Is there anything that I'm restricted by? Well, I'm only restricted by the idea that I'm having whole numbers. Okay? And what I mean by that is, it's got to be positive. I can't use a negative number of cups. We're going to get into, after chapter 7, some integer work, because we have to understand how integer work goes before we get into chapter 8, which is inequalities. But we could plug in mathematically 8 times a negative number, but that really wouldn't make any sense. I can't have a negative number when I'm talking about making something. So the only thing that I'm really restricted by is the idea that it's a whole number. All right, so going on. Now these are going to be a little different, because now I'm going to use an expression, but I'm going to find 3 different answers. So let's look at what I'm talking about. Write an algebraic expression for each word expression, down here. Then evaluate the expression for the 3 values of the variable. So I'm given a word expression, which it's written out. That's all it means by word expression. I have to create an algebraic expression, numbers and letters of a math problem that don't have an answer to them. But then I'm going to be told what the variable is equal to. The variable is the letter, and it's going to be equal to 3 different numbers. So I'm going to be doing 3 different problems. Each one is worth their own point for a correct answer. Each one is worth their own point for showing their work. So this is worth 6 points here, plus having the correct expression. So now this is worth 7. This one would be worth 7. So on your homework assignment, should you have these type of questions, that's 14 points right there that I count when I'm grading your paper. This one says the quotient of P and 4. Well, I need to know what quotient means. And quotient, you should know, is division. Now, addition and multiplication, once again, can be done in any order. It does not affect my math work. When I have things like taking the sum from, so I'm finding a difference, or quotients and things like that, I have to keep these terms in the same order. This says P and 4, so I have to have P divided by 4. Then I'm going to plug in 4P, 1/2. I want to plug in 4, and I'm going to plug in 6.5, 3 different problems that I'm going to be showing. So I start with 1/2. So I'm going to have 1/2 for the P divided by the 4. That's the expression that I came up with. When I look at that, I know I have to put my whole numbers over 1 because I'm doing multiplication and division with a fraction. So my 4 has to go over 1. And then I know I can't do that. So reviewing how to divide fractions, which is impossible, then I know I have to change it. I keep my first fraction. Division becomes multiplication. And then I do that little pigtail. I flip my second fraction. Once again, that is something called a reciprocal. Reciprocal means that I flip my fraction upside down. So now I have 1/2 times 1/4. Multiplying fractions, yes, I can do that. How? I multiply across. I end up with 1 times 1 and 2 times 4. So I know my answer is 1/8. So that's my first one. There are 2 more I have to do. So now I'm going to plug in 4 for P. I'm going to rewrite my new expression down here. or over here, excuse me, so I'm going to have 4 divided by 4. 4 divided by 4, that's pretty easy. That was the end of 3rd grade and all of 4th grade. A number divided by itself is 1, so I know 1 is my answer, and I'm good to go. Then my last one is taking 6.5 and plugging it in for P with the same expression then, dividing it by 4. First one gets typed into my calculator, 6.5 divided by 4. I'm going to get that it is a decimal. It has 3 decimal spaces. 1.625. 1 and 625 thousandths. Now let's look at this. 1 point for my expression. 1 math problem, 1 answer. 1 math problem, 1 answer. 1 math problem, 1 answer. Once again, 7 points. This one over here says 4 less than the sum of 8 and 5. So I have to look at how it's set up, and I have to figure out to make sure that I'm setting it up correctly for my expression. 4 less than. So that tells me I'm going to have to find something first and then take my 4 from it. I don't know what I'm taking it from until I go to the next half. So if something has to be done first, then it has to be also set off in parentheses. So the sum of x and 5. Sum, once again, we should know by now, means addition. So I should have x plus 5, then minus 4. Then I go back to my question and I plug in my information. So I have 1/2. I'm going to have 1/2 plus 5 minus 4. And 1/2 plus 5 is 5.5. 5.5 minus 4. Well, I take my whole number of 5 and I take 4 from it. That gives me 1.5. My second term that I have to plug in is 4. So 4 goes in for x. So in my parentheses, I'm going to have 4 plus 5. 4 plus 5 is 9, because I do my parentheses first. 9 minus 4 is my last step, and 9 minus 4 is 5. And then my last term, or number that I have to use is 6.5. So I'm going to plug in 6.5 in my parentheses for my variable. I'm going to take 6.5 plus 5 minus 4. 6.5 plus 5 is 11.5. And 11.5 minus 4 then is 7.5. So I have my expression, a problem, an answer, a problem, an answer, a problem, an answer, 7 points. 2 questions, 14 points that would be counted for homework. So that's all there is to chapter 7, lesson 6. So using the expression, plugging in information, and then solving for it. But I have to figure out how to set up the expression first. So make sure that the expression is set up, and then I take the information that's given. If I know I'm going for 6 hours, and I know I'm driving at a rate of 55 miles per hour, then I would multiply those together to find my distance. And when I multiply those together to find my distance, I know that I'd be going 330 miles. Not miles per hour, just miles, because I took my rate times my time, and then I'm finding the distance that I'm going. So take your time, read how the story problem's set up. Make sure your expression is correct first. Talk to each other and help each other. Don't give each other the answers. Collaborate with one another. Persevere and get through the assignment. If you aren't watching and taking notes, I'm going to tell you when you come and ask me questions to go back and watch the video and take the notes so you understand the lesson. I explained a lot of extra information in the video, as I always do. So if you're doing this, then you're going to have all of these things still in your mind and be able to be successful on your assignment. If you really are confused then, after you've done what I've asked, then you may ask me questions and I will help.